So we are talking about resurrection, and that Adam was to go through the growing period, through the formation stage, the growth stage, the completion stage, to become a person who's a complete character. And what happened here? Oops. Okay. To become a person of complete character. But he and Eve both fell at the top of the growth stage. And Eve fell, and then Adam did not fulfill his responsibility and also fell with Eve, and they both descended into an unprincipled realm. In other words, they were now no longer principled beings. So there's a difference between immaturity and sin. And immature people, of course, make mistakes. But there are mistakes, and then there's real sin that we saw the definition of sin. That's a violation of heavenly law. And, for example, maybe spilling milk on the carpet, something like that, or getting into a fight with your brothers and sisters. These are mistakes and something that the children will be chastised for. But these are things that happen when a person is immature. And this is not sin. So there's important for us to understand the difference between immaturity and actual sin. Adam and Eve were created in an immature state. And they have to go through a process of growing. But sin is something entirely different, especially the sin of the fall. That is not just a mistake. It's a sin, and it is a process. It is a situation where the connection with God is cut off, and a person puts themselves under Satan's authority. And then the necessity of salvation, necessity for resurrection, then comes about at that point. So Adam and Eve fell to where they were actually below the creation, because the creation is still existing according to God's principle, according to the principle of creation. So now human beings are below creation, and that's why we see in the Old Testament that people were offering up creation, animals or crops, as offerings to God, because these things were purer, shall we say, closer to God than they were. So, and we see the offerings made by Abel and Cain in Genesis, that they offered things from the creation, because they were now fallen human beings. They were children of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had these children after the fall. So now fallen human beings are in this period, and they have to go through a 2,000-year course. I don't say had to, because we'll see later on that it could have been different, but they did go through a 2,000-year period until Abraham, where finally they were able to establish through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, establish a foundation to receive the Messiah at that point then. So at this point then, they are able to start receiving God's instruction. And so God gave them, in the time of Moses, gave them the law and the Torah. And then there was 2,000 years from Abraham to Jesus. And at the time of Jesus then, there was a gospel was given, and then 2,000 years then to the time of the returning Christ. So this time this first 2,000 years is called the providential era for laying the foundation for resurrection. Can't do resurrection at that point because human beings are so far down. They're living in caves, they're eating bark or whatever because they've fallen into external ignorance as well as spiritual ignorance. And then from Abraham to Jesus, now Abraham is chosen by God to be the ancestor of his chosen people. So now we have the providence for formative resurrection. And now we're creating the chosen people. And then at the time of Jesus, then providence for growth level resurrection. And then when the Christ comes again, then we have the providence for completion level resurrection. So then with the physical body, resurrection requires the physical body. We are just in the form spirit time, during this time, justified by works. And this is called, these spirits who are at this level are called form spirit, or this is the form spirit world. and people are justified by works. In other words, they're justified by following the laws, all the many, many laws that were given to Moses. We know about the 10 Commandments, but actually Jewish people have a whole host of other laws that they have received from God, and they're justified by following those laws. Then Jesus came in and opened a new era of the providence. And this is he opened the paradise. And at that point, then people are justified by their faith. And then the returning Christ comes and opens the kingdom of heaven, and we are justified now by attendance, to actually attending the Messiah in our physical bodies. And through that, then our spirits are able to reach the divine spirit level. So, one person Carrie was asking someone, I guess she's relaying someone's question, why is it that there's so much more killing and so much more tragedy happening during this period between Jesus and the return of the Christ than happened before? First of all, I think we have a whole period of prehistory. I think genocide is not something that has happened recently. Tribes will be wiped out, nations will be wiped out. So I challenge the assumption that somehow there was more killing during this period between Jesus and the second coming. We have more written records, of course, of that period, and so it may seem that is the way, but I'm not aware of the archaeological records. I don't know. But if you look at if you go into the history of the Aztecs, for example, just as an example, not trying to pick on the people in South America, but the Aztecs were pretty brutal, right? And they would wipe out whole populations. And eventually they themselves were wiped out, of course, by the Spanish. But that happened during this time. But then before that, though, the Aztecs were pretty brutal to the people around them. This idea of the value of human life is something that really the world at large has come to appreciate the value of human life as a result of the spread of Christianity around the world. And communists today regard human life as not so different from the life of cats and dogs or animals, and you can kill humans without any consequence, as long as you're doing it for the sake of the ruling regime. So I think in the past there was also a lot of killing that went on. But it's true that certainly there's been a lot of blood over the past 2,000 years, and to the extent that there's been a lot of blood, especially among Christians, I would say that this is because the Christians are following the path that was followed by Jesus. They follow Jesus, so we follow Jesus, so it's not surprising that Christians receive a persecution, and that Christians are often killed and shed blood. Yes.
Might it be that when I was, thinking about that time period, of course, communism has been responsible for, hundreds of millions of deaths. Do you think one explanation might be because communism is satanic, like the perfection of satanic ideology that was implemented on a world level? So that's one reason why it was so widespread.
Well, that would maybe explain something about the 20th century. In 20th century, we had communism, we had a Nazi.
I see. Okay.
But before that, for example, I think the person who asked that question is referring to the Crusades or to other recorded incidents of a lot of killing, let's say, in both Western and Eastern cultural spheres. And But I'm saying that we have, because we have more records of that may be why it appears that there's more.
Tim, I have a question about the diagram on the right, about the justified by works, by faith and by attendance. I mean, I reflected a lot about how I believe I can speak for myself and probably for some others that in our understanding of we're living the age of attendance and no longer the age of faith, I think we neglected that the internalization of faith and the Christian foundation of the age of faith, I feel like sometimes that's how we slipped into salvation by works, because we thought attendance was, okay, Christ is alive on the earth, so we have to, follow him and do what he says. But somehow we missed the justification by faith, which made it, now when I think about that and understanding the grace of Christ, then I feel like I have a deeper understanding of justification by attendance. But would you say there's some relationship between justification by works then and justification by faith that maybe was misunderstood by Christians?
Probably yes, because Jesus did not come to deny the law, but to fulfill the law. So he did not come to deny the justification by works, but to fulfill that. And so justification by faith then is going to another level. We still want to follow the Ten Commandments, right? Just because we have faith, we still don't want to have any idols. We don't want to lie. We don't want to commit adultery. We still follow those 10 Commandments, don't we? So, but it's not. We understand that it's not the works that justify us, but it's rather our faith that justifies us. Right. So, in attendance as well, we have both works and faith, but we understand that those works and faith are not what justifies us. It's our attendance in our unity with the Messiah, with the true parents that justifies us.
Yeah, it seems like maybe in the Christian era there was a misunderstanding of works, because I remember that King talking about Martin Luther saying something about you should have deliberately. I'm probably misquoting it, but something about the overemphasis on faith, and that what you do is not so important as long as you have faith, and that was a misunderstanding of justification by faith.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Ken.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So in the three-color divine principle, it says that you can't have the kingdom of heaven when people are living in caves, like cavemen. It has to be a more sophisticated society. But the Garden of Eden, if Adam and Eve had come to completion and entered the next realm, that would have been pretty primary. So why can't we have the king? I mean, what if the whole world, has serious problems and there's only a few people left? Can't we just go camping?
Bushcrafting. It was the mission of the archangel to teach Adam and Eve the external things. So I think Adam and Eve, especially if he's going to be around for 900 years, he would have learned how to build a house from the archangel or from the angels, or he would have figured it out. It says God clothed Adam and Eve with skins, actually, not furs, but with skins. But also, there's a lot of scientific knowledge that would have passed down, would have been given to Adam and Eve had the archangel and the other angels fulfilled their responsibilities, and if Adam and Eve had maintained their relationship with God. So I don't think Adam and Eve would have been living in caves. Yeah. But also, the kingdom of heaven is something that first of all, it's of course the four shimjongs. So it's a matter of love, not a matter of external living environment so much. But also the external living environment should be reasonably comfortable in the kingdom of heaven. So I agree with it. You cannot have the kingdom of heaven if you're living in caves with damp, dark, I think that would be a little bit, that's not the kind of place that I would want to live in the kingdom of heaven. God gave us, or intended to inherit to us all the dominion over the natural world, right? So to use the materials in the natural world to create the kind of living environment that we want. I'm sure that Adam and Eve would have figured that out if they had allowed themselves the opportunity. All right, any other questions? Okay. Then, so to understand then that first of all, human history goes through this kind of a pattern. Well, I didn't show my laser pointer. Okay, this kind of a pattern, and it's not just going up like that. So there was an incident. There was an incident that happened at the beginning of human history, which caused the need for religion, caused the need for salvation to come into play. Adam was born without original sin, but after his fall, he had original sin, and so he was actually even below where he was, and then took through Noah, then Abraham, to Abraham for them to reach the point where they could have the foundation for resurrection. Now, the spiritual phenomena in the last days, the reason that God, because I think some people are watching online later the video without the book. The reason that God promised to pour out His Spirit in the last days, as it says in Acts 2:17, the period just before the human ancestors fell was a time when they could communicate directly with God, the Creator. The last days is the era when this period is restored all around the world. So people receive revelation that you are the Lord. And some people mistake this to mean that they are the Messiah. The person's assigned the mission to represent the second coming of the Lord in that era. So it is a limited mission, or you are the best. The spiritual standard of each individual varies, with the result that the level of the spirit world that each person can communicate with differs accordingly. Focused only on their individual vertical relationship with God, they're not aware of the horizontal relationships between them. This is the reason why a spiritually communicating person may receive the revelation that you are the best. The meaning of the revelation is that this person is the best one suited for their particular field of activity. It is not meant in reference to all human beings. And spiritually sensitive people will encounter confusion and trials due to conflicting views between and among them. So people receive revelations, but we need to be careful because spirit world, people in the spirit world also are limited in their understanding of God's providence. They also need to learn, and that's why when we study the Word, we'll find that there are other spirit selves or spirit beings also learning with us, because they also need to understand this content. So they may tell a person, "You are the one, you are the Lord," but that doesn't mean that person is the Messiah with a capital M. That person may have a responsibility to spread God's word within a particular area or era, but not the entire mission of the Messiah. That mission belongs to one person alone, and that is a true father, who is the true parent, and he has raised up a true mother to be his partner and his wife at the cosmic perfection level. Or you are the best. And we each have different spiritual standards, and each person can communicate with different levels of a spirit world. And we need to certainly be very wary of communications from spirit world to make sure that we check those communications with the Word of God, with the Bible, with the Cheonsongyong, and with the OSDP and the teachings of Father, and make sure that what we are receiving does not contradict those teachings. Okay, in the first resurrection, or the sealed 144,000, and this is in Revelations chapter 7, verse 4, where it talks about this first resurrection. Book of Revelation, chapter 7. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed at 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. And then it lists all the tribes, and 12,000 from each tribe. And so 12 times 12 is 144, or actually 12,000 from each tribe, right? So 144,000, yeah. And so this is one of the revelations that John received in his experience on the island of Patmos. So here, the first resurrection refers to the resurrection in which human beings are cleansed of the original sin for the first time since God began the providence of restoration. This will be accomplished through the grace and work of the second coming and will allow human beings to restore their original selves and fulfill, for the first time, the purpose of God's creation. Yeah. And then the providence of resurrection of spirit persons. So what happens to people in the spirit world then? Right? What happens to people in the spirit world who went there without being able to complete their characters? So the reason for this is that the spirit self can only grow and reach completion through a relationship with the physical body. Without the physical body, no resurrection can occur. There's no growth, no restoration, no multiplication like that in the spirit world, because that's not what spirit world was designed for. So people in the spirit world need some way, though, to reach that completion. Otherwise, they're stuck for eternity. So God has provided a way. The method of resurrection is that to form a standard for interaction, remember, with these spiritual activities of people living in the physical world. So you have to have a relationship with someone in the physical world. And, this can be a relationship through a descendant or someone who is in a similar position as they were, something like that, or it can be some kind of connection that they have with someone in the physical world. And in the resurrection of spirit persons who believed in God when on earth, that's how those spirit persons can accomplish their resurrection. So before Jesus, no one could go to heaven, no one could go to paradise. It was Jesus actually who opened the way to paradise. It was only all these spirits who died during that time. The best they could do was reach the top of the formation stage of the resurrection, and that's where Elijah was. That's Elijah was, and also that's as far as they could go. Yeah. But then when Jesus came, these spirits then who died during the Old Testament period then would work with the people who were with Jesus at that time, and then they could rise to the top of the paradise level or to the growth stage level. So the thief on the right then went with Jesus to the top of the growth stage. But also Jesus himself, you will be with me in paradise, because Jesus himself could not enter the kingdom of heaven. Because no one goes to heaven alone. No one goes to heaven alone. So until Father came and began the tradition of the blessing, heaven was empty. Kingdom of heaven was empty. No one was at that level. No one could build the kingdom of heaven. There was no one in the spirit world who was at heaven. So then here, the Old Testament spirits who have risen to this level, and the New Testament spirits who have also risen to this level at the time with Jesus, now at the time of the returning Jesus, okay, they are now, by working with the returning Jesus, the returning Christ, they're able to rise now into the kingdom of heaven, or to the divine spirit level. So this is the resurrection of the spirits. So it talks about in the last days there will be the resurrection of the spirits, not talking about people climbing out of their graves, talking about people rising to a new level in the spirit world that was not available to them previously. So this is an important distinction to make. The Bible's not lying. It's the Word of God is true, that there is resurrection. The people are going from death to life. But we need to be careful and understand that the physical body was never intended to live eternally, and once it is shed and buried, then it's not going to come back. It's not going to come back. It's there, and it decomposes down into its elements and becomes a part of the earth, ashes to ashes. Okay, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. There. So then, and then also the people then who are joining the Christ, not the Old Testament or New Testament spirits, but people who are joining the Christ also arise with them into the divine spirit level through the work of the returning Christ. So here, the resurrection of spirit persons who believe in God when on earth. This is how this works. Okay. And then there is now we talk about the returning resurrection of spirits who abide outside paradise. So here, this line represents the line between the spirit world and the physical world. And people in the physical world have a physical body, Now this is person A. Person B had a physical body, but that physical body has now died. The physical body has died and has now been buried and has returned to the elements of the earth. So it has no longer a physical body. But person B still exists in spirit world, okay, as the spirit self. Okay, and then they come and transition to spirit world, and then they then connect with the person A, who's still alive on the earth, still in the physical body on the earth, still has a physical body. Then here they establish this connection and then work with person A, okay? So that they are now working together to accomplish God's will on the earth, to spread the word, to spread God's love, to do whatever God needs them to do on the earth. So this is the cooperation. And so person B in the spirit world may give revelation or spiritual experiences, because spirit world is the world of cause. So things that happen on earth will often happen in spirit world first. So the person B can help the person A get through some of the stuff on earth by giving them inspirations. Hey, you need to, when Father was driving, his driver would tell me that sometimes when Father was being driven by a chauffeur, he would instruct his chauffeur suddenly, okay, take the next turn, something like that. Or take the next turn, something like that. Because the spirit world was guiding Father through a safe path to wherever he was going. And this is the kind of way in which a spirit world can work with someone who is in the physical world. Sometimes when I'm going down 84 and I miss my exit, I kind of justify it that way. I don't know. I don't know. I'm thinking about something else, right? And I drive right past the exit. Oh, well, if I'd gotten off of that exit, something bad must have happened or something like that. I don't know. But that can happen. I don't know. I did it. Once you miss the exit, you have no idea what would have happened if you had gone that way, right? Yeah. I don't know. So anyway, cooperation through this kind of returning resurrection occurs. And this occurs all the time with us, all the time. But of course, there are also people on the other side of the spirit world who are trying to make you go against God's will too. They're also trying their work, so that they're trying to keep you in death. But this is how we're assuming here that this is a good spirit person or a believer in a non-Christian religion working with another believer in a non-Christian religion. So these people are basically good people that are trying to accomplish God's will on the earth. Yeah. The death caused by the human fall and the work of returning resurrection of evil spirit persons. So evil spirit persons also, God gives them away too. They're also children of God, even though they're, bad children, but still they're children. So because evil people transition to the spirit world after sinning during their lives, they are unable to relate directly to God, who is the original substance of goodness. So God will not have anything to do with evil. So even, we have both good and evil within us. So God only relates to the goodness within us and not to the evil. Nonetheless, God must save everyone, even the evil spirit people. In the spirit world, there is no mechanism by which evil spirit persons can indemnify the sins they committed on earth. So this indemnity also has to happen in the physical world through the physical body. And that's another importance of the physical body. For this reason, they must establish indemnity conditions on earth to remove their sins, even though they're in the spirit world. Accordingly, the evil spirit persons set up their indemnity conditions as a punishment for the sins committed by people on earth. From the viewpoint of that person on earth, that condition is as a punishment. Accordingly, only when the works of the evil spirit person establishes an indemnity condition for the person on earth to resolve the sin they have committed does the evil spirit person receive the benefits of resurrection. When they receive the grace of resurrection, they are liberated from the realm of spirit world, in which they reside. And then for this to happen, the person on earth has to repent of his or her sin, have faith in God, and practice good in their daily life. Thus, the work of changing the person on earth is not carried out by God directly, but is carried out by the evil person on behalf of God, or instead of God. So, and this is easily misunderstood and easily exploited to sort of justify some of the things that may happen to us, or some of the things that we do. But it's important to note that the person in the physical world, in the physical body, must repent of their sin and have faith in God and practice good in their daily life. So that and if that happens, then the evil spirit who has caused the punishment to occur may receive some of the elements for his or her resurrection in the spirit world. But for an evil person, it's this is a very difficult thing to actually happen. And from what we hear from people who are in spirit world, is this establishing this connection, even for a good spirit, is actually a very difficult thing to do. And one thing is that people in the physical world are kind of fickle. They start going in one direction, okay, or they start going in one direction, and so the spirit world sort of prepares their path for that, so that things will go smoothly. But then just suddenly they'll decide to go another direction. Wait a second, whoa, wait a second. I thought you were going this way. I prepared everything for you over here. Or to do something, okay, and spirit world says, okay, great, we'll help you do that. But then, no, I don't think I'll do that. I'd rather watch TV, something like that. I'd rather take a nap or something like that. Then the spirit world is kind of left hanging. So it's really difficult for a spirit world to engage in this kind of cooperation, because people don't understand spirit world. Those of us who were on MFT learned a lot about this, right? A lot about working with spirit world. And we had a lot of experiences about this. And one of the benefits of working on MFT, regardless of how poor our external result might have been, is that we learned this kind of thing. We learned how to work with spirit world in accomplishing a certain goal. And one of the things is that you keep your commitments, you keep your promises to spirit world, and you don't ever think that, oh, well, yes, I know I set that goal, but yeah, that was just me. No, it's not, because if you set a goal to accomplish something, then it's not just you. Even if you didn't tell anybody about it, God knows and spirit world knows, and they're trying to help you, they're trying to work with you to accomplish that goal. And if you just say, it's too hard, just forget it, then they're left hanging. And that then makes it more difficult for them to trust you the next time that kind of thing comes around. Didn't you experience that? Yeah. We experienced that a lot on MFT. Yeah. So even today, in our lives today, we need to make that kind of commitment and be consistent. If we say we're going to do something at a certain time, then do it, unless there's something really some overpowering circumstance that really we cannot do it, or there's something much more important that we need to do, or something like that. But not just because we just don't feel like it or something. So, in this way, the evil spirit person establishes a condition that results in the resolution of the sins of people on the earth. Therefore, the evil spirit person is acting in place of God for the accomplishment of the will, making it possible for the evil spirit person to receive the grace of resurrection. Because an indemnity condition in the form of a punishment is established to liquidate the sins of people on earth as per God's desire, the evil spirit persons come to receive the grace of resurrection. Yeah. Yeah. And the two types of returning resurrection work carried out by evil spirit persons. One is direct and one is indirect. So the evil spirit person can have this relationship with a person on earth or with a criminal, and then using the criminal, then the person on earth. Yeah. Person on earth meaning person with a physical body. So here, the evil spirit person is having a give-and-receive relationship with an evil person who has a physical body. Okay, let's call this the mugger. All right, this is the mugger. And then the person on earth, this is I guess a kind of basically a good person anyway, someone who needs a little punishment on earth. And then there's some kind of give and receive. In other words, or a mugging. Okay, a mugging is kind of a give and receive, right? Give me your money. So this is or the evil spirit person, and here directly with the person on earth. The theory of reincarnation in light of the principle of returning resurrection. So even some people especially on the left, like to believe in the idea of a reincarnation. Prince Philip of England, before he died, said that if he was going to come back to life, he'd like to come back as a virus to reduce the human population, as is well known. But reincarnation is actually it's believed in Hinduism and in Buddhism, and it has kind of affected Western society through those religions. But this is essentially a misunderstanding or a kind of a low-level understanding of the relationship between a spirit world and the physical world. So the spirit persons who were unable to complete their mission during their earthly life, okay, must return to people on earth who are similar to themselves and who have the same type of mission. They must then cooperate with those people on earth in order to accomplish God's will. In this way, the cooperation helps the person on earth to fulfill his mission as well as the mission of the supporting spirit person. Thus, from the viewpoint of mission, the physical body of the person on earth stands in for the physical body of the cooperating spirit person. So here we have people in the spirit world, all right? People in the spirit world, and this is a line that is the line between the physical world and the spirit world. So then the spirit person here and people on earth, okay, and then they are cooperating with people on earth to help with the second coming. And Elijah also has a mission. John the Baptist has a mission. So John the Baptist essentially had the similar mission as Elijah, to prepare the people of Israel to receive the Messiah. That was also Elijah's mission. So then they are working for the second coming. So we say that someone has the John the Baptist mission, for example. And during his life, a father worked with a number of different people who had the John the Baptist mission. Billy Graham was probably someone who had a John the Baptist mission. He was very well respected within American Christianity, but unfortunately he was not able to connect with Father during Father's time in his physical body. So, but that would be an example. If Billy Graham had worked with Father, that would have been an example of a John the Baptist mission being accomplished through Billy Graham. The theory of reincarnation, continuing up to the present day, Buddhism has taught the doctrine of reincarnation, and many Buddhist followers have believed that if one lives a good and virtuous life on earth, he or she will be reborn as a human being, but if one lives in an unvirtuous manner, he or she will be reborn as an animal. So there is a hierarchy of the creation, and depending on how you live, you can move up or down that hierarchy according to the Buddhist belief. This approach to faith is incorrect. Human beings were created as the children of God, and only human beings have a spirit self. It is incorrect to think that if a person lives in a bad way and then departs to the spirit world, that person's spirit self will change from human being, from human into ape or some other animal. The spirit world is a world of light. Hell, the realm of darkness, exists in the lowest realms of the spirit world, and the kingdom of heaven, the realm of light, exists at the top. These spirit persons who, in other words, top meaning closest to God. These spirit persons who reside in hell do not have a defined or definite form. For this reason, they may appear as animals depending on what form they take. The idea that human beings reincarnate as animals derives from observation of this reality. From the perspective of the principle, reincarnation is synonymous with returning resurrection. So I don't know if Prince Philip is in the spirit world today. Perhaps he's in the spirit world now. He lost his physical body before he could receive the blessing. Perhaps he is a virus. I don't know. I know there is a variant of the virus that that was first found in the UK, right? So perhaps, we don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the spirit world that we don't yet fully understand. The unification of religions brought about by the returning resurrection. So people in the spirit world now want to fulfill the purpose of their religions. And so people in Christians or Jews in the spirit world who understand that the Messiah is now on earth, they will work with Jews and Christians on earth to guide those people to the second coming of Christ, or from the Jewish perspective to the first coming, whichever you want to believe it. It's still the Son of God has come. And the Buddhists and Hindus, they will also guide their people to the second coming. And in Buddhism, they also believe in the coming of the Maitreya Buddha, right? Maitreya Buddha. So then they say, okay, well, Reverend Moon is the Maitreya Buddha. So then they will guide their people to the second coming. Or Confucianism also has the idea of a perfect man coming in the future. And Islam also, the final prophet, and people in spirit world, Muslims in spirit world, will realize this and then guide Muslims to Reverend Moon. From the Christian perspective, he's the second coming. From their perspective, he's the returning of whatever founder or prophet that their religion was founded by. And just generally, good spirits will also work with people of general good spirits, the believers on earth, to bring this about. Okay. Predestination is a short chapter. Let's go through this. Any questions about resurrection now, before we start the predestination? Yes, Carrie.
In Changpyeong, we were told that our ancestors would go to a 40-day workshop in the spirit world and become absolute good spirits. So, what's your opinion about that?
I think let's stick with OSDP. I think let's stick with Father's teachings.
Right, but that was when, I'm not trying to blame Father, but that was when Father was alive, and yes. So did that conflict with the theory of resurrection? So,
as I've mentioned before, what was happening in Changpyeong was that this is what we learned about just now in the chapter of resurrection is the basic way in which people in the spirit world are resurrected. But Father, because there was a need to unify the spirit world more quickly than would have happened under this kind of a process. This is a slow process. It's difficult to establish that relationship of cooperation, and it's difficult for people, to actually grow through this process. So he granted a special grace to some people in the spirit world, and these are people who have descendants on earth. That's the first condition. Who are in True Father's authority, who are blessed in True Father's authority. those people, up to the 210th generation, were then given a special blessing that they could be liberated and blessed in the spirit world, regardless of what it says here in chapter 5. But that was a special blessing that applied to a limited number of people in the spirit world. And I think the people who ran Chongpyong took some liberties with that. And Father would, even if something was not completely correct, he would sort of let it run its course, and I think that was kind of what was happening there. So I don't know about the situation with the absolute good spirits. What I do know, as you said, that whatever happened in Chongpyong did happen under Father's authority. And that means that he takes responsibility for that. But whatever has happened in Chongpyong after Father's cosmic ascension is fraudulent, because now it needs to happen under the auspices of the second king, and Chongpyong is not under the auspices of the second king.
Yeah, thank you. Would you also say that the liberation ceremonies, ancestor liberation ceremonies held by the second king, that's a special dispensation due to the merit of the age in terms of... So
the second king is continuing continuing that system, yes. And that also now is happening under Father's authority, not under the king's authority, but under true Father's authority through the king. And people ask me, well, what about the 40-day workshop? Well, I'm sure Father will take care of that without our... But Chongpyong, for example, would make people go there numerous times, right? You had to go there first to liberate your spirit, then you had to go...
We remember.
Okay, then you had to go back, then you had to go back. And each time you went back, you had to pay more money. Mm-hmm. Now, the person doing the liberation or person requesting liberation can set the donation amount on their own, through prayer. And if they have no money, then zero is also acceptable. If that is what they truly and sincerely believe is all that they can afford. Whereas Chongpyong, of course, had it's just a scandal how much money there were, and still, by the way, still taking from, especially Japanese members, were just astronomical sums were siphoned up. That's the only way to describe it.
Thank you. Just one more clarification. Forgetting about Chongpyong now, and just talking about, the second king continuing Father's tradition of the ancestor liberation. Would you say, in terms of this lecture on resurrection, it's that the ancestral liberation is, I'm kind of repeating myself, due to the merit of the age, because it's not in this manner, right? It's something that is initiated by the descendants on earth. It's not the people in the spirit world, making their way up, but it's like a sudden grace, a sudden liberation. Would you say that would be the case?
Yeah, it's I don't know if I don't know. You want to put words in my mouth about merit of the age.
I'm just trying to understand, because it is.
It's grace. It's special grace.
Okay. Yeah. That's okay. That's fine.
And because it's special grace, there is no assumption that it will continue forever.
Okay, but you understand, I mean, it has to do with resurrection.
Yes,
it's not
yes.
here. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at predestination. And, yes, hello? Yes, uh-huh.
Okay, I just want to clarify a little bit. Okay, so at Chongpyong before, under Father's authority, we used to be able to liberate our ancestors on the husband's lines, and then they went to a special 100-day workshop with Hunjanim, apparently in charge of that. Do we are they the spirits that ancestors we liberate now? Do they go to any special workshop? It seems like they can receive the liberation and the blessing at the same time.
Yes, yes. They receive liberation and blessing at the same time, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, and then we used to be able to liberate aunts, uncles, even friends or people, other
Right.
people,
Yes.
not directly related to us.
Right.
Is that possible now, or that's
No.
not?
No,
Yeah,
it's not possible now.
Okay.
It's only the direct lines, the 8 lines, 4 of the husband, 4 of the wife,
Right.
and no brothers, no uncles, no husbands or wives, if the husband is not doing it himself. But, if it's then I get questions like this, and if they have children, then the children can liberate the spouse, but not, for example, the wife cannot liberate the husband, but the children can liberate their father or their mother. And no, liberating Abraham Lincoln and things like this. No. Yeah. Chongpyong really did come up with a lot of creative ways to make money. Yes.
But if we did do those things, then it was valid at
It was
that time.
valid at that time.
Okay.
Yes, it was valid at that time.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, and generally speaking, there has been sort of a, tradition, but pattern, I suppose you could say, of these liberations happening around the Day of True All Things, which normally falls in June each year. So perhaps there will be another liberation next year in June. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what the king decides about that next year. Okay. All right. Are we ready for predestination? Okay, great. Yes, we are predestined to go through this. All right, so the issue of predestination, the prosperity and decline in human life, fortune and misfortune, salvation or damnation of fallen human beings, the rise and fall of nations. Are these all predestined? Are they things that are written and are going to happen and there's nothing that we can do about it? Or is there another situation? And here, there are arguments for and against the idea that the script has already been written and we are just playing along on that script. Here in Romans 8:29 and 30, it says, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called, and whom he called, them he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. All right, so Paul appears to be saying that, hey, if everything has already been decided for you. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate. So if God already knew about us, and what was it, Jeremiah, I think, said that, God foreknew about me in the womb. So then everything is already decided. What about Romans 9:15 and 16, where it says, for he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. That also seems to show that it's already been decided, and I have nothing to do with it. And Romans 9:21, has the potter no right over the clay? And so saying in the same thing then God can do whatever he wants with us. Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? So it also seems to be that God decides everything and that we have really not much to do with it. And Romans 9:11 through 13 before as well. For the children being not yet born, now here he's talking about Rebekah, okay? So we're talking about the children of Rebekah, who were, is everybody awake? Who were the children of Rebekah? That's right, Jacob and Esau, okay? Just making sure you're awake. Okay, so here, and not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, I'm in verse 10 right now, even by our father Isaac, for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth, it was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. So what did Esau do to be hated by God? So Paul seems to be saying this was decided by God, And this was predestination. Seems to be. But there are also verses that seem to suggest the opposite. Jesus says in Matthew 7:7, ask and it will be given to you. So if you don't ask, it's not going to be given to you. You have to ask. So it's not the fact that it's going to be given to you is not predestined, it's dependent on your asking. In James 5:14, is any one of you sick? He should call the elders of the church to pray over him. So again, have people pray. It's not predestined that you're going to die. Pray. Genesis 2:17, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There, so the fall of Adam and Eve, the eating of the fruit, was not predestined, according to the expression in Genesis 2:17. Because, if it was predestined, then why would God even bother telling them? They're going to eat what they're going to eat, right? So then just let them eat, and we'll go with the script. And in Genesis 6:6, the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth. And it didn't have to be that way. And God didn't have to be sorry. So predestination, is it true or is it not? So first of all, let's talk about the predestination of God's will. So God is absolute, unique, eternal, and unchanging. Okay? His will then is also absolute, unique, eternal, and unchanging. The purpose of creation, the purpose of the providence of restoration, all these are absolute, unique, eternal, and unchanging. So the predestination of God's will is absolute. God's will be accomplished. Boom, period. No question. It's going to be accomplished. So God's original ideal of creation is going to be accomplished. God's utopia, God's kingdom of heaven. But the accomplishment of that will, the will itself is absolute, but this requires God's responsibility plus human responsibility. God cannot do it alone. He will not do it alone. Because if he does it alone, it will destroy the very ideal that he is trying to create. Human beings will just become no better than animals. Cannot be God's children, cannot be the lords of creation, cannot have freedom or creativity unless they fulfill their portion of responsibility. So ask and it will be given to you. So asking is the responsibility of human beings. James 5:14, is anyone of you sick, he should call the elders of the church to pray. Praying then is the portion of responsibility. Genesis 2:17, but you must not eat from the tree. Then not eating of the tree was then the portion of responsibility. The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth because people were not accomplishing their portions of responsibility, and they were going in a direction that was evil. The longer it went, the more evil existed on the earth. Let's continue until 12 o'clock. Is that all right? It's been about an hour, but I'd like to continue. So predestination with respect to the will is conditional. But it won't go on forever. Eventually, we're going to have a situation where God's will is established. It's not going to drag out forever. A long time, yes, but not forever. Okay. So the predestination of human beings, God's providence of salvation, each one is the then providence for each one. Then is the whole. Conditions for the central figure. The conditions that the central figure must possess. So this means that God starts with one. He starts with a point, as I said. He works in concentric circles out to the whole. Starts with Jesus. Jesus finds a woman he can marry, and then raises up that and educates that woman. They have children. They have a family. Then then those children have children. They have tribes, and nation and the world. So in concentric circles, working from one out to the whole. That's how God's providence of salvation works. So then the condition that central figure must possess must be a member of the chosen people. Jesus had to be a Jew. He had to be a Jew, and because no one other than a Jew could have this this qualification to be a member of the chosen people. And a descendant of ancestors with a track record of many good deeds. Of course, that was certainly true with Jesus. And then an innate disposition. Jesus, had a lot of patience. And also he had a righteousness, didn't he? When we see him clearing out the money changers in the temple, he also had a strong sense of righteousness. And conditions formed during life and the time and place required by heaven. So these are various central figures that come about in the providence of God at many levels, and they have to have this. I think but today the chosen people are the people who are blessed in the true Father's authority. And so to be a central figure in the providence today, you have to be a member of that group of people who are blessed in true Father's authority. Human responsibilities, when this is fulfilled, the predestined individual completes his mission and his will, that God's will is accomplished. Whereas if he fails in that responsibility, does not fulfill it, then the predestined individual fails his mission, and God's will not be accomplished. And for example, we have in Acts 1, 15 and 26, where after Judas betrays Jesus, and after Jesus resurrects, and after he ascends, actually, Matthias takes the place of Judas among the 12. Okay. And the predestination of human beings is therefore conditional. It's conditional, but it's not going to go on just forever and ever and ever. We're at that point now where things are getting very interesting. So the explanation of biblical verses that underlie the concept of predestination, because a lot of people will believe in this, especially some of the people in the past, such as Calvin, for example. If someone tells you that, oh yeah, I'm a Calvinist, that means that most likely they believe in some form of predestination. Because Calvin, who was one of the religious reformers in the 16th century, was very big on this idea of predestination. And of course, the Presbyterian Church grew out of Calvinism, and so a lot of people in that tradition still to this day will tell you that they believe in some form of predestination. So we need to be aware of the ways in which we can explain to these people that is not the case, and they need to change. Romans 8:29, already we had that, but for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, who he did predestinate, them he also called, and whom he called, them also he justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. So let's look at what that means, okay? So here, justified and glorified here. So then God's portion of responsibility, okay, and the human portion of responsibility leads to the fulfillment of the word. So when this person fulfills his portion of responsibility, he is glorified by God, and this is the equivalent to the fulfillment of the word. But if it is justified, but the person who fulfills the portion of responsibility is justified and glorified. So it's conditional in that sense. So an individual is predestined to be glorified by God only when that individual fulfills his responsibility. Because the scripture verse seems to omit any reference to the human portion of responsibility, people have interpreted this as signifying that God's glorification depends only on his absolute predestination and nothing else. Okay? And where it says, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, the scripture was given in order to emphasize God's complete authority and grace. And yes, God will, for example, the holy blessing, none of us qualify for the holy blessing. No one qualifies for the holy blessing. And Father would bless who he wanted to bless. And sometimes he blessed criminals. And people would say, what? Yeah. But yes, he actually would talk about how he blessed criminals. And the potter has no right over the clay? In other words, once the potter who is making things out of clay, he can take a clump of clay and do whatever he wants with it. He can make a cup, he can make a saucer, he can make a jar, whatever he wants. And so this is saying that God can do whatever he wants, right? So this scripture has the purpose of teaching us that because human beings fell and became like garbage, fit to be thrown away, we have no right or basis to complain, regardless of how we are dealt with by God. But God is not evil. God is not trying to destroy us. God is always trying to find the shortest path to accomplishing his ideal of creation. So sometimes when he gives us difficulties, This is to train us or to educate us so that we can be his instruments in the world to bring about his ideal. Some people will blame God for this. That's wrong. And about Jesus favoring Jacob over Esau before they were even born, God's relationship with Jacob and Esau was set up so that a certain course in the providence could take place. And we'll be talking about this later on in the providence of restoration, the principles of restoration. Adam had children, Cain and Abel, and actually we'll see in the principles of restoration that there was a opportunity for the Messiah to come even through this relationship of Adam, Cain, and Abel. There was an opportunity. That opportunity was missed, and so then it continued to Abraham and then to his son Isaac, and then Isaac had Esau and Jacob. So this was recreating that opportunity in the generation of Isaac, where again there was an opportunity to establish a foundation to receive the Messiah, which, by the way, did succeed finally, but Jesus still couldn't come at that time for reasons that we'll get into later on. So he said that he hated, but God also told Cain that if he does well, things will work out for him. He tells Cain that in Genesis. The same way with Esau. To say that he hated Esau in the womb, still, if Esau had fulfilled his portion of responsibility, he could have received God's love. And Jacob says that God loved Jacob, but also there was a responsibility to be fulfilled here. And if he does not fulfill that responsibility, God is not going to, he's not going to receive God's love. Abel, in his case, he made the offering and fulfilled his responsibility in that way, but he and Cain were not able to reunite, and so the providence that God wanted to fulfill through Abel failed because of Abel's death at the hand of Cain. And so that was actually a tragedy in God's eyes. And so that opportunity for the Messiah to come was recreated in the generation of Isaac, where Esau and Jacob and them were set up for providential purposes. Providential purpose, yeah. So Cain and Abel position is something that we'll talk about very much in part 2. And it's not a bad thing to be in the Cain position, because Cain is also necessary for God's providence to proceed. But there are certain, so we talked previously about knowing what position that you are in, right? We talked about it in chapter 2, under the fall of the human fall. We have to know what position we are in and what responsibilities we have that are associated with that position. And when we do those responsibilities, then God's providence can succeed. And when we don't, then that's a failure, and things will have to come again. Okay, Jenny, please.
Han mother also can be same situation, same case.
In what sense? Probably yes, but I want to hear your explanation.
Yeah. So God choose the Han mother for true mother's position, yes. But she couldn't fulfill her responsibility, so she cannot receive God's love anymore.
Yes, yes, and actually she was not the first. There were 2 other women before her who also could not fulfill the position, and yes, so she was called. But if she had fulfilled her position, in other words, at the time of Father's cosmic Songhwa, if she had not tried to take power for herself, but had submitted herself to Father's lineage in the form of the successor that Father had chosen, in the form of her youngest son, Hyungjin, then she would have, fulfilled her responsibility, and she would be in a very wonderful position today. But instead, externally, she thinks that she's in a good position. She thinks that she may think that, I've got this big palace and I've got diamonds and rubies and everything like that. Apparently they finally took away that statue, I heard. Apparently it wasn't so popular. That's what I've heard. I have not confirmed that, but this kind of thing, is undermining her authority, and she does not have a good future ahead of her, I'm afraid, especially in the spirit world. I hope that she can repent before she goes to the spirit world. That would be wonderful if that could happen. We'll have to see how things work out for her. Yeah. But yes, that is an example. Yes, thank you. All right, I don't want to go to the next chapter because the next chapter is Christology, and that's kind of a heavy one. And so let's have a good meal and full belly before we tackle Christology. Anybody else that want to help us fill the next 15 minutes, or shall we go ahead and break for lunch now? All right, let's break for lunch now. Okay, let's come back at 12:45 then. Yes.